After my wife passed, I got the storage unit. My son got everything else. That's how it started. 63 years of marriage, 40 years of building something real, and when the attorney read Catherine's will out loud in that conference room off Maple Avenue, my son looked at me the way you look at a stranger who's asked to borrow $20, like he'd already calculated his answer before I finished the sentence. Catherine had passed 6 weeks before, pancreatic cancer. She fought it for 14 months, and she fought it the same way she did everything. Quietly, completely, without asking anyone for permission. I retired from teaching high school chemistry the same week she got her diagnosis. I told her that morning. She cried, which was rare for her. She was a structural engineer for 31 years, ran her own firm for the last 12. She did not cry easily. The attorney's name was Evelyn Marsh. She'd worked with Catherine for over 2 years, which I didn't know at the time. I thought Catherine used a different firm, one downtown. I was wrong about a lot of things. The conference room had one of those long tables that makes everyone feel like they're at a board meeting. My son, Philip, sat across from me with his wife, Renee, beside him. She had her hands folded in her lap and kept glancing at the folder in front of Evelyn, like she was waiting for a prize to be announced. Philip was 41. He wore the kind of suit that costs more than my first car. Evelyn adjusted her reading glasses and cleared her throat. To Philip James Alderman, she began, I leave the primary residence located at 4410 Ridgemont Drive, Asheville, North Carolina. Appraised value $2.8 million. Renee let out a slow breath through her nose. Philip's jaw relaxed slightly, the way it does when you've already run the numbers and they came out the way you wanted. Additionally, Evelyn continued, the investment portfolio through Fidelity Wealth Management. Current value $4.1 million. And the business accounts associated with Alderman's structural design totaling $1.4 million. Philip leaned back in his chair. I watched him do the math without moving his lips. Nearly $8 million. All of it in one sentence. Evelyn turned a page. To my husband, Raymond Alderman. I felt my hands go still in my lap. I leave the property located in Haywood County, North Carolina, 12 acres, including a storage facility and outbuildings. County assessment value, $82,000. Philip blinked, then blinked again. Evelyn looked up. The property was purchased by Catherine Alderman in 2009 and has been maintained under a separate LLC. It was not part of the marital estate. Philip said slowly, a storage facility. Evelyn did not look at him. She looked at me. A storage unit, Philip repeated, like the words had a taste he didn't expect. Dad gets a storage facility in 12 acres of nothing. I opened my mouth, closed it. He turned to Evelyn. There has to be a mistake. My mother was a structural engineer. She built an entire company. She would not leave my father 12 acres and a storage shed. Evelyn's voice was even. The will is extremely specific. Your mother worked on this estate plan for 26 months. Every detail was deliberate. 26 months. Catherine had been managing her diagnosis, her company, her doctors, and this. Philip pushed back from the table. I'm contesting this. Evelyn folded her hands. You're welcome to. I'll tell you the same thing I tell every client who considers contesting Catherine Alderman's estate plan. She used a former federal trust attorney who now practices private estate law. Contesting this will be expensive. It will take years, and the result will be identical. Philip stood. He grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. Dad, he said. He didn't look at me. He said my name the way someone says a city they've already left. Are you really going to accept this? I said quietly, your mother wanted me to have the property. He laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. You're 67 years old. What exactly are you going to do with a storage shed in the mountains? I haven't seen it yet, I said. He shook his head. He said something else to Renee that I didn't catch. Then he looked at me one more time. Fine. Enjoy your storage unit. But don't call me when the roof falls in and you realize she left you with nothing but 12 acres of problems. The door closed. Evelyn and I sat in silence for a moment. She removed her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. I said, I'm sorry you had to watch that. She said, I've seen worse. Then she slid a small envelope across the table. Your wife left this for you. She asked that you open it when you reach the property, not before. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy stock. Catherine's handwriting on the front, small, precise, the kind she used when she was being serious. Ray, trust what you find. Don't let Philip talk you out of it. Evelyn placed a key on the table beside it, a regular-looking key, nothing dramatic about it. Haywood County address is in the deed packet, she said. About an hour and a half west of here. She held my gaze for a moment. Catherine loved you very much, she said. I spent 2 years working alongside her on this plan. She was careful about every single detail. I nodded because my throat was too tight for words. That evening I drove back to the house on Ridgemont Drive, Philip's house now. I parked in the driveway and sat there for a while before going inside. The dogwoods Catherine planted along the front walk were starting to bud. She would have noticed that. I almost didn't. I had 3 weeks. Philip had already handed me a notice, politely worded, attorney drafted, 30 days from the date of the will reading. He and Renee were planning to renovate. They needed the space. I sat in the guest room that night and held the envelope and the key and didn't open either. I just sat with them. Catherine's last words to me, 2 days before she passed, were not dramatic. She was tired. She squeezed my hand and said, Ray, the property knows what it's doing. I just need you to go see for yourself. I didn't understand what that meant. I still didn't. I had 23 days to figure it out. The trouble started on day 5. I was sorting through the hall closet. I had been given permission to take my personal belongings, and only those, when Philip appeared in the doorway with a man I'd never seen before. The man was younger, maybe early 50s, and he carried the kind of briefcase that signals he is being paid well for whatever he is about to say. Dad, this is Lawrence. He's a specialist in elder financial planning. I said, hello. Lawrence smiled the smile of a man who has given this particular presentation before. He opened his briefcase on the hall table without being invited. Mr. Alderman, he said, your son has expressed some concerns about your ability to manage a complex property transition at this stage of life. He spread several documents across the table. This is a durable power of attorney. It would allow Philip to manage the Haywood County property on your behalf. I looked at the first line of the first page. The principal hereby grants irrevocable authority to the agent over all real property, financial decisions, and health care matters. Irrevocable, I said. That's correct. I turned to the section Lawrence had highlighted in yellow. In the event the principal is deemed unable to manage his own affairs, the agent may petition the court for full conservatorship without prior notice. I looked at Philip. You want legal control of the property. Dad, he said, I'm trying to help you. You're 67. You're alone. You don't know anything about managing rural land. I closed the folder. If I don't sign this, I said. Lawrence tilted his head. North Carolina Statute 35A provides for emergency guardianship proceedings. Given your age, your recent loss, and the fact that you're planning to relocate to a rural property without a stable income, a judge could grant temporary conservatorship within 72 hours. I looked at Philip for a long time. He didn't look away. When did you start planning this? I asked. He said, I'm trying to help you. I picked up the folder and handed it back to Lawrence. Get out, I said. Lawrence packed his briefcase with practiced efficiency. Philip stood at the door. You have 3 weeks, he said. Think about it. After they left, I sat down on the floor of the hallway. Not because my legs gave out, just because it seemed like the right place to be for a minute. 2 days later, I noticed a recycling bin near the garage. Philip had been clearing out papers all week. A manila folder had slipped out and landed in the driveway. The tab read, Dad. Care planning, Renee's handwriting. Inside were glossy brochures, Blue Ridge Senior Living, Weaverville, North Carolina, photos of a low building, fluorescent common areas, residents in wheelchairs watching television. A contract was paperclipped to the back. Resident, Raymond Alderman. Room type, semi-private, monthly rate, $4,100. Move-in date, June 12th. The signature line for the resident was blank. I looked at the date on the contract again, January 8th, 11 days before Catherine died. Philip had already signed the paperwork to have me moved out while his mother was still alive. I took pictures of every page. Then I put the folder back exactly where I'd found it. That night, my phone rang. Philip's number. I almost didn't answer. Then something made me pick up, hit mute, and hold very still. Philip's voice came through low and quick. "Yeah, I'm at the house. He's still here, acting like everything's normal." Another voice. I couldn't hear the other side. "I know, but listen. If he goes out to that property and actually pokes around, we might have a problem." A pause. The survey from Mom's firm, the geotechnical one, Ridgeline Associates. I couldn't get into her files before they were locked. If he finds it, he'll know what that land is actually worth. A pause. The conservatorship petition is ready. Lawrence said we can file Monday if he doesn't sign. After that, everything goes through me as conservator. I reached for the voice recorder on my phone. I hit record. Philip continued. He's a retired high school teacher. He's not going to connect the dots unless someone draws them for him. And if he does go to the property, we move fast. File Monday. Get him placed by the end of the month. Then I handle the land transaction with Hargrove. The call ended. I saved the file, backed it up, labeled it March 2nd Philip call, geotechnical. I didn't sleep, but I understood now. There was something under that land, or in it, or about it, that Philip knew and I didn't. And Catherine had known Philip would come for it. That's why she sent me there first. On day 14, the certified letter arrived from Haywood County. Property tax delinquency notice. Raymond Alderman, owner of record. Amount due, $11,400. Deadline, May 28th. Failure to pay would result in public auction. I brought it to Philip. He was in the kitchen. He glanced at it. "Yeah, I know about that," he said. "Taxes go unpaid when there's an estate in transition." He handed it back. "Sign the power of attorney and I'll take care of it. Or don't, and the county auctions the property before you even move in." I said, "I'll think about it." That evening, Evelyn Marsh called me. "Sam," she said, "I heard Philip made another move today." "Ray," I said. "Right. Ray, I'm sorry." She paused. "He's been contacting my office as well. He wants the tax lien waived through the estate." I told him no. The lien is legitimate and your wife's instructions were clear. "Evelyn," I said, "I can't cover $11,000. I've got my teacher's pension, about $2,200 a month. That doesn't cover a tax bill." "I know. But Ray, listen, that property is worth significantly more than Philip has led you to believe. Please don't sell it. Not to him, not to anyone, not yet." Then what am I supposed to do? "Go to the property," she said, exactly like Catherine asked. "Open the envelope there. There's more inside than you're expecting." I was quiet for a moment. The yard was dark outside the window. The dogwoods were fully budded now. She continued, "Catherine placed that property inside an irrevocable trust 18 months ago. It's titled entirely in your name. No power of attorney can touch it. No probate order, no creditor. Philip has no legal authority over that land. Then why is he pushing so hard? Because he knows something you don't yet. And Catherine knew he would come for it." "Evelyn," I said, "what's he after?" She was quiet. "I can't tell you. She made me promise. Open the envelope when you get there. Trust her." "What about the tax lien?" "I filed an extension request with the county this morning. You have until July 31st. The trust includes a provision for delinquent taxes." Catherine anticipated this. I exhaled slowly. "You're sure?" "Completely." She planned for this exact moment, Ray. "Don't sign anything. If he pressures you again, call me immediately." I sat on the back porch for a long time after the call. The tax notice was in my jacket pocket. Catherine's handwriting was in my wallet. 2 more days, I thought, then I'd know. Day 19 was when Philip made his final offer. I was loading the last box into my truck when he came out the front door. He had an envelope in his hand. He held it out. "Dad," he said, "look, I know we haven't handled this well. Let me fix it." He opened the envelope. $40,000. He held out the check. Cash it today. Walk away from the property clean. I'll handle the taxes, the deed transfer, everything. 2 days ago, the offer had been 60,000. Now it was 40. I took the check from his hand, read the amount. Then I tore it once, then again, and handed the pieces back to him. He stared at the torn paper. I'll take my chances, I said. He said something as I walked to the truck. I didn't turn around. I just got in, started the engine, and backed out of the driveway. I didn't look at the house in the mirror. The drive to Haywood County took about 90 minutes. The city dropped away behind me. The traffic lights, the shopping centers, the new construction that had been going up along the Western Highway for the past 3 years. Then the road opened up. The Blue Ridge Parkway interchange came and went. Mountains appeared on the horizon, blue-gray in the morning haze. I passed through Waynesville. Then out along a state road that narrowed gradually, barbed wire fences on both sides, farmland, old homesteads, a church with a hand-painted sign. Eventually, I turned onto a gravel road with a mailbox post that had no box anymore, just a rusted bracket. A new nameplate had been nailed to the post. Alderman. The property was about a quarter-mile in. The storage facility wasn't what I expected. I had pictured a single metal shed. What I found was a long, low metal building, maybe 4 units wide, concrete floor, solid walls, a newer-looking roof that was out of place with the rest of the structure. Behind it were 2 outbuildings, and beyond those, 12 acres of land dropping down a hillside into what looked like a creek bottom lined with hardwoods. I parked and got out. Wind moved through the trees. No traffic. Nothing. Philip had said it looked worthless. Standing there, looking at it, I understood why he'd thought that. On the surface it did. I thought about the recording on my phone. Geotechnical. Hargrove. Ridgeline Associates. I pulled Catherine's envelope from my duffel bag and walked to the main building. The key fit the padlock on the center unit. Inside, the concrete floor was swept clean. Along the back wall was a metal shelving unit, a folding table, and a filing cabinet. In the middle of the floor sat a trunk, military style, olive drab, the kind with reinforced corners and a brass lock. On the table were 2 envelopes, one sealed with wax, the one from the will reading, one from Evelyn's office, Catherine's handwriting, Ray. I set down my bag. I stood there for a moment. "All right, Catherine," I said quietly. "Show me. Before I open those envelopes and tell you what Catherine left inside, leave a comment with the word 'found.' I want to know who stayed with this story all the way to this moment. And one quick note, some details here have been shaped for storytelling. The heart of it is real. If that's not your kind of thing, no hard feelings. But if you want to know what was actually in that trunk, stay right here." I opened the envelope from Evelyn first. "Ray, by the time you read this, you're at the property." "Good. I'm sorry I couldn't explain while I was still here. Some things are safer written down. The trunk in the center unit. The key from Evelyn opens it. Everything you need is inside. I love you. I'm still looking out for you, even now. Catherine." I picked up the key. It opened the trunk's brass lock with a single turn. Inside were 4 labeled folders: Geotechnical Survey, Philip, Documentation, Conrad Hargrove, Conspiracy, Trust, and Partnership Records. And on top of them, one more envelope, my name in Catherine's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. "Ray, if you're reading this, Philip has already tried to take the property. There are 3 things you need to understand. First, Philip stole from us. Over 14 months, he forged my signature on 3 separate wire transfers from the Alderman Structural Design operating accounts, total $260,000, moved through LLCs he created. The red folder has everything: bank records, wire transfer receipts, surveillance photos from the branch on Marymount Avenue. I discovered it in August of last year. I didn't confront him. I documented it. I let him think he'd gotten away with it. I set the trap. Second, Philip has been coordinating with a developer named Conrad Hargrove since the spring. Hargrove has been buying up property in Haywood County for the past 8 years, specifically land above the watershed corridor. He and Philip plan to force you into conservatorship, take control of the property, and sell it to Hargrove's development company at a fraction of market value. The blue folder has their emails, wire transfers, and contracts. Third, this land sits above a Class 1 watershed aquifer. Independent hydrological surveys confirm it's one of the cleanest natural water sources remaining in western North Carolina. The land has been under a protected designation for 7 years, which means no development. What it does mean is this: the Nature Conservancy and the state of North Carolina have both expressed interest in a conservation easement purchase. Fair market value, based on 2 independent appraisals Catherine commissioned, comes to between $1.2 and $1.6 million. And you keep the land, you keep the surface rights they pay you for the conservation covenant every year, for as long as the easement holds. I put the letter down. I put it down and sat on the concrete floor and looked at the metal wall in front of me. $260,000. 14 months. He had done it while Catherine was in treatment, while she was too exhausted to fight back. She had been in appointments, in recovery, in the slow, terrible work of staying alive. And he had forged her name and moved money through shell accounts and called it a loan to himself that he would never repay. And she had known. She had watched it happen. And instead of confronting him and causing a scene that would have cost her more energy than she had spent the months she had left building a case so complete that he couldn't escape it. I sat there for a long time. Then I opened the folder labeled Philip. Documentation. The first page was a timeline in Catherine's handwriting, precise, dated. Each entry a wire transfer. May 14th, 2022, $85,000. Alderman Structural Design Operating Account. Forged wire authorization. Transferred to Eastfield Consulting, LLC. Sole owner, Philip J. Alderman. August 30th, 2022, $92,000. Joint investment account. Counterfeit power of attorney submitted to the bank. Bank branch surveillance confirms Philip in the building at 10:47 a.m. January 3rd, 2023, $83,000. Retirement account, early distribution claim. Notarized documents. Signature inconsistent with known exemplars. Total, $260,000. Beneath the timeline, copies of the wire authorizations. Catherine's forged signature. The loops wrong, the pressure pattern off, the way handwriting experts would describe as a competent but not expert forgery. Security camera stills from the Merriman Avenue branch showing Philip in a gray coat at a teller window. Bank statements with transfers highlighted in yellow, and at the bottom, a sticky note, found August 19, 2022, monitored 5 months, documented everything, let him believe he was safe. I closed the folder. I thought about all the evenings I had sat beside Catherine's bed reading aloud while she was too tired to hold a book. I thought about the appointments I had driven her to, the nights she had barely slept, the way she'd sometimes look at Philip across a dinner table in those last months, and then look away without saying what she was thinking. She'd been carrying this alone so I wouldn't have to. I whispered her name into the empty building. Then I opened the blue folder. Conrad Hargrove. Catherine had written his background in the same hand. Developer, Asheville area. 22 years. Specializes in rural and watershed-adjacent land acquisition. Known for aggressive approach to distressed properties. Has purchased 16 parcels in Haywood County since 2016. Several through tax auction, at least 3 through pressure sales. Approached Alderman Structural Design directly in 2021 about a land transaction. I declined. He did not take it gracefully. The first document was an email chain. Hargrove's address at the top. The date, April 14th. The year Catherine was diagnosed. Mr. Alderman, we met briefly at the Western Carolina Development Forum in March. I've been following your family's Haywood County parcel for some time. Watershed land in that corridor is extremely scarce, and I believe there's a transaction that could benefit both of us. If you're open to a conversation, please keep it discreet. Conrad Hargrove. Catherine had circled the word discreet in red pen. In the margin, he already knew the land's value. He approached Philip before he approached me. The next email was Philip's reply, 4 days later. Conrad, interested. Parents don't fully understand what they have. Open to discussing options. Catherine had written beside this. He sold us out in 4 sentences. I turned the page. Text message screenshots. Printed and stapled. Hargrove, October. Need your mother's hydrological files. Can you access them? Philip, she keeps her office locked. I'll figure it out. Hargrove, 2 weeks later. Clock is ticking. Find a way. Philip, working on it. Below, a bank transfer record. Hargrove Development LLC to Eastfield Consulting LLC, $40,000. Date, November 2022. Memo line, consulting services. Catherine's note beneath, first payment. He became a paid informant against his own family. The final document was a contract draft. Hargrove Development Group letterhead. Purchase agreement. Raymond Alderman, seller, agrees to convey 12 acres in Haywood County to Hargrove Development Group for the sum of $195,000. Seller relinquishes all rights including mineral, water, and surface rights. In the margin, Catherine had written, in red, market value with conservation easement, $1.2 to $1.6 million. Hargrove's offer, $195,000. Theft. Below that, an email. March 3rd, Hargrove to Philip, time is running short. Once Catherine passes, we need to move within 90 days. I'll pay you $3 million on closing. In return, get your father to sign. Use whatever you have to. Conservatorship, nursing placement, financial pressure. I don't care about the method. Just close the deal. C.H. Phillips' reply, same day, agreed. I've already researched facilities. There's a place in Weaverville, Blue Ridge Senior Living. If he resists, I file for emergency conservatorship. My attorney says it's straightforward given his age and recent loss. Timeline, April to May. I set the folder down on the concrete floor. I sat with it for a long time. Not rage, something deeper than rage. The kind of stillness that comes when you've run out of room to be surprised. Catherine had known all of this. She'd watched it unfold from her hospice bed and said nothing because saying something wouldn't have fixed it. It would have only told Philip she'd seen him. So she'd stayed quiet, and she'd built a wall he couldn't see until it was already around him. I picked up the final folder, Trust and Partnership Records. Inside was a letter from the NC Department of Natural and Cultural Resources dated September of the previous year. A formal letter of interest in a conservation easement purchase for the Alderman Haywood County parcel, 12 acres, Class Watershed Corridor. Proposed compensation, $1.4 million, paid in a structured annuity over 8 years. Annual payment, approximately $172,000. Stapled to it, a letter from the Nature Conservancy's Southeast Regional Office, co-investment interest, willing to participate in easement funding to protect the aquifer corridor, and a handwritten note from Catherine Ray. I negotiated both of these. The easement protects the land permanently. Nothing can be developed on it, but the compensation is real and the payments are guaranteed. You don't sell the land, you never sell the land. They pay you to keep it. Evelyn has copies of everything. Let her finalize the easement. All you have to do is sign and stay. See, I folded the letter and held it in my hands, $172,000 a year, starting within 90 days of execution. My teacher's pension was $22,000 annually. I stayed in the storage unit until the light changed outside and the shadows moved across the concrete floor. Then I drove the quarter mile up the gravel road and sat in my truck looking at the land. 12 acres, a hillside, a creek at the bottom, trees that had been here longer than any of us. Water moving through limestone under the surface, clean as anything going somewhere useful. I thought about the recording on my phone. Philip would come. He'd bring Hargrove or he wouldn't, but he'd come. I was ready. That evening there was a knock at the storage unit door. I'd started sleeping inside. The cot was old but solid, and there was a battery lantern and a camp stove, and it was quiet in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. I opened the door. A man stood on the gravel. He was maybe 70, heavy-set, worn jacket, work boots with actual dirt on them. He held a casserole dish wrapped in foil and what looked like a thermos. "You Raymond?" he asked. "Yes." "Name's Orrin Hicks." He nodded toward the road. "I run the hardware store about 4 miles east." He held out the casserole. "Catherine asked me to check on you. Said you'd probably show up around now." I stepped aside. He walked in, set the food on the folding table, looked around once without comment. "No electricity out here," he said. I figured. He pulled a lantern from a bag I hadn't noticed he was carrying, set it up on the shelf. Also brought a propane connection for that camp stove, if yours is the two-burner kind. "It is," I said. "Good." He pulled a chair from somewhere, sat down. "I should tell you, your son and a man named Hargrove have been around town, asking questions at the county courthouse, talking to the assessor. Hargrove's been down to the regional water authority, too." "What kind of questions?" Orrin folded his hands on his knees. "Land value, easement status, water rights." He looked at me. In a small county, word moves fast. Catherine knew that. She asked me to keep her informed whenever anyone came asking about this parcel. "I've been doing that for about 2 years. She didn't tell me," I said. Orrin shrugged, not unkindly. "She said you had enough to carry." He reached into his jacket pocket and produced an envelope. "She left this with me about 8 months ago. Said to hand it to you if you ever showed up alone. Inside, $15,000 in cash. And a note. Ray, for the first few months. Don't worry about where it came from. I had it set aside for exactly this. See." I had to look at the ceiling for a minute. Orrin said, "She also asked me to tell you something." He looked at his boots, then back at me. "She said, tell Ray I didn't do this because I was dying. I did it because I knew what he was worth, and I wanted him to know it too." I didn't say anything for a while. Orrin didn't seem to need me to. "Your son and Hargrove will probably be here by day after tomorrow," he said. He stood, pulled a card from his shirt pocket. "My number. Call if anything happens before then." He pointed at the casserole. "Chicken and rice. My wife made it." He left. I ate standing up, watching the tree line in the dark. They came on a Tuesday morning. I was sitting on the step outside the storage unit when 2 vehicles turned up the gravel road. Philip's black SUV and a newer truck I didn't recognize. They parked side by side. Philip got out first. He was in a sport coat, no tie, dressed down for the occasion. The man from the truck was older than I expected. Maybe 65, silver hair. The kind of tailored casualness that costs money. He moved with the ease of someone who rarely heard the word no. "Dad," Philip said. He stopped a few feet away. He didn't offer his hand. "We need to talk." I said I figured. The other man stepped forward. "Mr. Alderman, my name is Conrad Hargrove. I develop land in this region." He didn't offer his hand either, just his name, which told me he knew this wasn't a friendly call. "I understand you've been going through a difficult transition. I'd like to make you a straightforward offer." I looked at him for a moment. "Go ahead, $800,000, cash." He said it evenly, like a man reading a grocery list. "Sign the deed over today. I cover the tax lien, the closing costs, everything. You walk away with $800,000 and no obligations." More than 4 times what Philip had offered me in Asheville. The number was bigger because they were scared. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. "There's something you should hear first," I said. Philip's expression didn't move. I hit play. His voice came out of the speaker into the morning air. "If he goes out to that property and actually pokes around, we might have a problem. The conservatorship petition is ready. Lawrence said we can file Monday if he doesn't sign. Get him placed by the end of the month. Then I handle the land transaction with Hargrove." The gravel was very quiet. Hargrove looked at Philip. I said, "I recorded that 6 days ago, from the hallway of what used to be my home." Philip didn't know I was there. Philip said, "Dad." I said, "You forged your mother's signature on 3 wire transfers while she was in chemotherapy. You contracted with this man 4 months before she died. You signed paperwork to put me in a facility while she was still alive, in January." Hargrove took a half step back. I looked at him. "She knew about you," I said. "She documented your correspondence with my son going back 2 years. Emails, wire transfers, the contract you drafted for this property. The folder with your name on it is already in my attorney's possession." He was very still. Evelyn Marsh's car came up the gravel road then. She pulled up alongside Hargrove's truck and got out with her briefcase in the quiet composure of someone who had prepared for exactly this moment. Behind her car was a second vehicle, a man in the North Carolina Department of Natural Resources badge, holding a portfolio. Evelyn walked straight to me. "Good morning, Ray." She looked at Hargrove. "Mr. Hargrove." She reached into her briefcase and produced a folded document. "Cease and desist. You are prohibited from contacting Raymond Alderman, making financial offers related to this property, or conducting any transaction connected to this land. Violation initiates immediate legal action." She handed it to him. "Catherine Alderman's trust specifically names you as a prohibited party. Any attempt by Philip Alderman to transfer or encumber this property in coordination with you results in forfeiture of his entire inheritance and exposes both of you to federal wire fraud prosecution." Hargrove read the document. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes went flat. She turned to Philip. "The documentation folder is complete. Bank records, wire transfers, surveillance footage, your correspondence with Mr. Hargrove. All of it. If you file a conservatorship petition, contest the will, or make any further contact with this property, your inheritance reverts to your father. The criminal evidence transfers to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Wire fraud carries a federal sentencing range of 5 to 20 years. Philip stared at her, then at me. The man from NCDNR stepped forward. "Mr. Alderman," he said, "I'm here to begin the easement execution paperwork if you're ready. The state's funding is confirmed. The Nature Conservancy co-investment is finalized. Your first annuity payment would initiate within 90 days of execution." I said, "I'm ready." Hargrove turned and walked to his truck. He got in. He drove away down the gravel road without a word. Philip stood alone in the open space between the cars. He looked at me. For a moment I saw something cross his face that I didn't have a name for. Not shame exactly, not regret. Something smaller than either of those. The look of a man who had run a calculation and come up wrong. He said quietly, "You had all of this." "The whole time," I said. "Your mother had all of it. She built this, not me." He stood there another moment. Then he walked to his car and got in and drove down the road the same direction as Hargrove struck. Evelyn watched them go. Then she turned to me. "You okay?" I said, "Yeah." She almost smiled. "Let's get started on the paperwork." The easement execution took the better part of 2 weeks. There were environmental assessments, hydrological confirmations, survey reviews, deed filings with Haywood County. Evelyn and the NCDNR attorney handled most of it. I signed where I was told to sign and read everything before I did. Orrin brought coffee every other morning and didn't ask unnecessary questions. His wife, Dorothy, started bringing meals twice a week without being asked. I fixed the leaking flashing on the back of one of the outbuildings as a way of saying thank you without making it awkward. The annuity confirmation arrived by certified mail on April 19th. State of North Carolina, Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, Conservation Easement Compensation. Alderman Parcel, Haywood County. Annual payment, $171,400. First disbursement within 90 days of execution. I drove down to the hardware store and told Orrin. He shook my hand and said, "Catherine knew what she was doing." I said, "She always did." Philip withdrew every legal action on April 23rd. His attorney notified Evelyn in writing. Client wishes to avoid further proceedings and accepts the terms of the trust. He retains the Ridgemont property, the investment accounts, the business assets. I retain the land. He sent me one email. I read it. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just a business communication from a man closing a file. I replied once. I told him what he'd done to his mother. I told him that she'd known, that she'd watched it happen, and chosen to protect me instead of confront him, because confronting him would have cost her energy she needed to stay alive. I told him I didn't want to hear from him again. I hit send, and then I blocked his email and his phone number. Evelyn called that afternoon. She said, "Good." I said, "Is it over?" "Completely," she said. "Catherine built this to last." I sat on the step outside the storage unit. The creek at the bottom of the hill was running loud that week. Spring runoff, the snowmelt coming down from the higher elevations. I could hear it from where I sat. I thought about Catherine standing at this property line years before, looking down the hillside, thinking about what it meant. She had come out here without telling me. I hadn't known about this land until the will reading. She had known what it was and what Philip would want, and she had spent the last 14 months of her life making sure he couldn't have it. That's the kind of woman she was. 3 months later, the first annuity payment arrived. Partial first year, prorated from execution date. $97,000 even. I sat at the folding table and held the check and thought about what Catherine would say if she were here. She would say something practical. She would say, "Ray, don't just sit there, go to the bank." I went to the bank. Then I sat in the parking lot for a while and thought about what I wanted the rest of my life to look like. By October, I had moved the cot out and a real bed in. Oren's nephew put in a propane heating system and a proper generator. There was running water from a well on the property that just needed the pump replaced. I hired a local contractor out of Waynesville to fix the roof on the second outbuilding and put new windows in the storage unit I'd converted to a living space. It wasn't a mansion. It was 12 acres in the mountains with a creek at the bottom and more quiet than I'd had in 40 years. It suited me. I started a small fund that fall. Catherine's name, no ceremony about it, just a setup through a community foundation in Waynesville. Seed, $50,000. Purpose, scholarships for students in Haywood County pursuing STEM fields at NC State, UNC, or Western Carolina University. The first awards went out the following spring. 4 students, $5,000 each. One of them, a girl named Ada from a family outside of Canton, wanted to study environmental engineering. She shook my hand at the small ceremony the community foundation organized and said she wanted to work on water quality issues in rural communities. I thought about what was under the ground right below where we were standing. I said, "That sounds exactly right." Conrad Hargrove was indicted on federal charges 14 months after he drove away down the gravel road. Wire fraud, conspiracy, real estate fraud involving 5 separate transactions in western North Carolina over 6 years. I learned about it from Orrin, who learned about it from the county commissioner, who had read about it in the Asheville Citizen-Times. The evidence in Catherine's blue folder, which Evelyn had forwarded to a federal attorney Catherine had worked with during the documentation period, was cited in the indictment. Catherine had given them everything they needed. She just hadn't lived long enough to see the result. Philip testified under a limited immunity arrangement. He kept his assets. He lost his professional licenses. His firm closed. The house on Ridgemont Drive sold within the year at a loss because the scandal attached to the name made buyers cautious. I don't know where he and Renee went after that. I didn't ask. Orrin told me once, about a year in, that Catherine had stopped by the hardware store one afternoon the previous fall. She'd been running low on energy by then, but she'd driven herself. She sat at the counter and had coffee and told him she was trying to figure out how to make sure Ray lands on his feet. He'd told her, "Your husband is a good man. Good men find their footing." She'd said, "I know. I just want to make sure the ground is solid before he has to stand on it." That's what she'd spent her last 14 months doing, making sure the ground was solid. The annuity paid $171,400 that first full year. The following year, the same. The Nature Conservancy added a second payment under their co-investment agreement, an additional $38,000 annually. Total, just over $209,000 per year, guaranteed for as long as the easement holds, and the easement is permanent. I live on about $45,000 a year. The rest goes to the foundation. By the end of year 2, we'd awarded 17 scholarships, funded 2 small business startup grants for local craftspeople who needed equipment, made a contribution to the Haywood County Free Clinic for uninsured families. I am 69 years old. I wake up at 6 and walk the property line before the day heats up. The creek is running well this year. The hardwoods along the bottom are coming into leaf again. Oren comes by on Thursdays. Dorothy still brings food I don't need but accept because it would be rude not to. Philip is somewhere. I don't know exactly where. I don't want to know. He made his choices while his mother was alive. She made hers. I made mine. That's the whole of it. Hargrove is in federal custody, waiting sentencing. Ada is finishing her second year of her environmental engineering program. She sent me a note last month, handwritten, which is rare for her generation, and I appreciated it. She's studying groundwater remediation. She said she thinks about the watershed land sometimes and what it means to protect something you can't see. I thought about that for a long time. Catherine spent her last year protecting something I couldn't see yet, a future I didn't know existed. She did it quietly, at cost to herself, without asking me to help carry it, because she knew I was already carrying everything else. There is a granite bench at the property line now, facing the creek. I had it placed there in the spring. Simple stone, Catherine's name and her years, and one line beneath, something she said to me once, years ago, when we were arguing about whether a structural decision she'd made on a project was worth the extra cost. She'd said, "Ray, the foundation is never the part you see. It's the part that holds everything else up." That's what she was, for 40 years. And then for 14 months more, when she was running out of time, she built the foundation for what came after. I sit on that bench in the morning sometimes. The creek runs below. The trees do what trees do. I talk to her when nobody else is around. I tell her the foundation held. I've thought a lot about what Philip actually believed he was doing. I don't think he saw himself as a villain. I think he saw a dying mother, an aging father, a piece of land that looked worthless on paper, and a number that looked good on a spreadsheet. He made a calculation. He just made it without accounting for the one variable that changed everything, which was that his mother was smarter than him and had more patience than he deserved. That's the part that stays with me, not the money, not the easement payments or the foundation or any of it. What stays with me is the image of Catherine sitting at that conference table or at her desk behind a locked door, or driving out to Haywood County alone without telling me, quietly building something I didn't know existed, doing it while she was exhausted, doing it while she was running out of time. She didn't ask for my help because she knew I was already at capacity, and she loved me enough to carry the extra weight herself. That's not a small thing. That's the kind of love that takes intelligence and discipline and a particular kind of courage, the courage to act without recognition, to build walls that only reveal themselves after you're gone. Philip chose differently. He had the same parents, the same upbringing, the same example in front of him for 40 years. He watched his mother build something real and honest through 30 years of careful work, and what he took from that was, find the angle, move fast, don't get caught. He thought the gap between what he could grab and what anyone could prove was wide enough to walk through. He was wrong, because Catherine had been measuring that gap for 14 months and filling it with documentation. What you choose to do when you think no one is watching is who you are. Philip thought he was operating in a blind spot. He wasn't. He never was. I'm 69. I've had time to sit with all of it. The anger, the grief, the strange gratitude that follows grief, when you finally understand what someone actually did for you. I'm not going to tell you I have no bitterness. I'd be lying. Some mornings I walk the property line and I think about the fact that my son signed paperwork to put me in a facility while his mother was still breathing, and I feel something cold and heavy that doesn't have a clean name. But I don't stay there long, because there's a creek at the bottom of this hill, and Ada is in her second year of an engineering program, and Orrin still shows up on Thursdays, and the ground beneath my feet is holding exactly the way Catherine said it would. She didn't build this for revenge. She built it because she understood something I'm still learning, which is that the most durable thing you can leave behind is not money or property or even love in the abstract. It's structure. It's the quiet, invisible work of making sure the people you care about have solid ground to stand on after you're gone. I sit on that bench by the creek, and I talk to her sometimes. I tell her the foundation held. I tell her about Ada and the scholarships and what the hardwoods look like when the light comes through them in the early morning. I tell her Hargrove is facing sentencing and Philip is somewhere I don't need to know about. I tell her I understand now what she meant. The foundation is never the part you see. It's the part that holds everything else up. She built it. I'm standing on it. That's the whole story.